Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Burning Question. My name is Peter, and today I have the pleasure of having on the show Jeff Hallowell. He is the founder and CEO of Biomass Controls, and he joins us from Connecticut. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Peter. Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
So I would love to, Biomass Controls has had a super interesting history. And I'd love if you wouldn't mind running us through kind of how you guys got started and where you are now.
Sure. So originally we started looking at air quality, actually, and what are the types of things that we can do to help improve air quality. And one of them was biomass, was the basically a burning or pyrolyzation of biomass. And so we looked at different technologies that would help that meet EPA requirements, because we didn't want to take problems that we were trying to resolve with the climate and then turn that into an air pollution problem. So that's how we got started. Early on, we looked at different technologies and realized it was the controls that really made the difference, that if it was smart and you could manage the process, you could reduce the emissions and come up with a good product that would be very consistent. So that's what we were looking for, and that's how we got started.
Nice. And when did you guys get started, and what was your first product?
So we got started actually in the biochar nutrient recovery market in 2010, and we came up with a bunch of different patents, and that was really part of a company we had called ClearStack, which was really focused on the air emissions. And then it was through them moving more to a test lab and us towards R&D that we split off in 2015 as Biomass Controls, which was really looking for challenges in the space, which went beyond biomass at that time into wet material, which also makes a lot of emissions. And so we got involved with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and actually human waste, which is has a lot of nutrients in it. It's very good to make biochar, but also has a lot of emissions, and it has odor, which were two of the challenges that we faced working in that project.
And so you kind of start off trying to tackle the problem of what to do kind of with sewage and how to convert it into something that's useful. Would that be a fair assessment?
Correct. The goal was pathogen reduction, which is very good for trying to provide a service in areas where they don't have it, because about 4 to 5 billion people don't have safe sanitation. In most countries, I think 1 in 3 do not even have access to a toilet. So things that we take for granted, places like India, 700 million people go outside every day, they don't have access to a toilet. So once you start putting in toilets, what do you do with it? And so it's most of the world is non-sewered. And so it's all moved manually. And so reducing pathogens, reducing volume, but also retaining those nutrients is extremely important.
So, I've looked at your website, but I think a lot of the people that watch this may not have yet, or will once they watch this. Where do you guys focus geographically?
We started in India because they have the most need in the central voice. There's 1 billion people there, and about 70% don't have access to sanitation. That's where we started. We've just recently, actually last week, signed a large manufacturer that'll be building our systems over there. We're also working in, thank you, we're working in South Africa, which is a leading area for sanitation in Africa. And now we're starting to work with different potential licensed manufacturers in China.
Cool. So you started out focused on, obviously you have experience doing the maybe software and control side of it, but you also did a equipment manufacturing piece of this, and at least the design. Where do you guys focus now?
Yeah, so we had to build the systems in the beginning, but it's not our focus. So we're working with manufacturers. So we are focused on the controls, but a lot of it is data driven. So we collect the data and then we report, and we have an app. So it shows the system working, it shows the treatment, and we can do reporting to show, evidence-based sanitation, or even that we're meeting the requirements for time and temperature and for the emissions. So it's all about measurement. And so we've moved from kind of a software as a service, infrastructure as a service kind of bridge between those two areas, depending on the needs of the country.
Cool. So let's dive in a little bit to a particular example. Let's say your work in India. Can you lay out maybe how the process works? Is there what are the different layers of the system, and what do they produce? They produce biochar, electricity. I don't, all these, kind of break down those pieces for us.
Okay. So in one place, in Maharashtra, a place called Y, that's where one of our systems is located. They actually have a 3-year cycle where everything's scheduled for pickup. And so there's tipping fees there. So it's a profitable business where people do pay for it and to have it taken away. And there's both private and municipal. And then they bring it to a central location where it is dewatered. So it's really important, especially for the breakdown of nutrients, to separate the liquid from the solid. It's actually when it stays together which causes the methane and the rotting and the greenhouse gases and the odor. So by separating the liquid and solid, you've already made some big progress there. And then it goes through a dryer and actually goes into our system. And so we use the heat from our pyrolysis to actually run the dryer. So it runs itself. And we're also demonstrated in 2018, we can actually use some of that excess heat to generate electricity to run the system as well. And we're still working on that. So it comes out of the system, and we can also use the heat for pasteurization, which we've used at that site as well. So we can pasteurize the water, come out with clean water. We can recover the nutrients, which includes carbon, which is in a form of biochar. And also soon we'll be able to produce electricity, and it will run itself as well. It's a containerized system, and so it's very easily moved and maintained, and seems to be working out well. We've got several systems in India, mostly in the southwest and in the southeast as well.
Cool. So sewage, effectively dry sewage in, or dried slightly, solid sewage in, and then biochar, heat, and some energy out the other end of the machine. If it's a black box, say, and clean water.
And clean water. But the clean water is actually filtered. There's a lot of off-the-shelf technologies that can already do that. So we just work with them. We're just integrated together. Cool.
And then can you break down a little bit, in terms of what is captured? I don't know how frequently your systems run. Are they continuous, or are they kind of a batch system?
It's a continuous running system, but we run 6 days a week. Okay. So they start up in the morning, run it, and shut it down at night. So they run about 12 hours a day, and the system's operational about 10 of those hours, because there's a startup period and then there's a shutdown period. So it's 10 hours a day, so it's about 60 hours a week.
Wow. And they run year round, or are they containerized and you kind of move them from place to place?
It runs year round. So it's, even though it's containerized, it's stationary there. So right now we've done about 13 million liters of septage, they call it, that comes in. So it comes in from septic tanks, which is different than sewage, which would come through a sewer line. So
forgive my ignorance.
No.
So how much biochar or char do you produce, and then what do you do with that?
Right. So in each area, there's a different requirement for agriculture. So in Y, they grow a lot of strawberries. So they need soil that's designed for strawberries. And in one place, Warrangal, where we are, they have a lot of cotton there. So the biochar is first used for air filtration. So the carbon is really good for filtering the air for the odor. So we use it in filter boxes coming out of the dryer. And in one site, we actually use it out of a grinder, where we try to make it more homogeneous. And so we always feel that you should be using it a few times. You can also use the biochar for the turbidity in the water. So even though the water is clean, it still can have an odor, and it still could have a slight color to it. So you can run it through the carbon filter also to take out that odor and also the color. And then finally, you could use it as a soil amendment. So depending on what's needed for the soil, for pH and for carbon and some of the other nutrients, depending on those requirements, then it's put on there. And we are also used for mixing with compost. So there's a lot of sites that do make compost, and having the biochar or the carbon in there is really good. It's concentrated, it can hold moisture, and it's really good for holding those nutrients as that compost breaks down as well.
So that makes sense. So is there variation in how these sites operate? Do you sell? How does your business model work? I assume you don't own and operate all of them.
We don't.
Okay.
So our business model is, well, first of all, at all the sites, they get a tipping fee. So they get paid to take the material in. So we always believe that if you're going to do nutrient recovery, there should be a good financial model there. So they get paid to take it, and then they can sell it as well. So
You know how much they get paid when they sell it?
they
Well,
get
it matters
paid.
a lot. I mean, it varies, but
Yeah, it's about a couple rupees per kg. So I don't know the conversion for that.
Okay,
But,
we'll get our community to help out and
yeah, but
figure out what that is.
it's equal or better than some of the materials by itself. A lot of times they have to pay to get rid of the compost. At least now people are realizing the value and they are paying for it. So it's nice that they can do that. And we believe that as the benefit long term of those crops that are using it go up, that the value will increase over time. So it's kind of a new concept for them.
That is interesting. I've heard, obviously there can be some skepticism about using things that are derived from what did you call it? Septage,
yeah.
Septage. Derived for septage being put on as a soil additive. Is that something that you people who are running your machines face, and if so, how do they think about that?
Right. So the difference between probably sewage and septage is that it's more rural, and so they're not taking a lot of drugs. Everything, it's a very clean material. They have with COVID though, because COVID can be detected in septage and in sewage. And so they do take measures when they're handling it. But the other good thing is the heat treats it. So rather than putting it on the crops or dumping it in the fields like they used to do, untreated, now it's treated. So, the big problem in the world is about 2,000 children die every day from sanitation-related diseases. And so that if you can stop dumping the waste raw and untreated, you'll cut back on those. And so our goal is to affect 1%, which would be to save 20 children a day. So making biochar, getting a tipping fee, saving lives, those are all good things.
That sounds good.
By taking carbon and putting it back in the ground. So it's important.
This is I mean, it's such an interesting model. So from a carbon sequestration and climate perspective, how much carbon are you capturing, and how much could you scale up what you're doing now?
Right. So there's some information I can share that we have on our website, but it's different. Like we're doing dairy cow solids, and so the amount of carbon that's being sequestered there is different than in humans, and also it depends on the age. But generally, we're processing about 2 tons a day, but that 2 tons has about 85% moisture.
Water, right. Okay.
And so you have to take the moisture out, and then there's a percentage, and based on the temperature that you run it at, you can sequester more carbon. So it's generally around a 25 to 30% return. We try to do it at low temperatures, but sometimes if its material is older and you need more energy, you use a little bit more of that carbon drying the material as it comes in. So what's very important for all these is an energy balance, because you want to, if it's low in energy and has a lot of dirt in it, then you're not going to be able to be self-sustaining. So the fresher it is, and the less inorganic material, as we call it, dirt, then you're going to get a higher yield. So it does vary by the site, and it varies sometimes by the day. But I would say it's in that 20 to 30% range on a dry basis.
So on a dry basis, 20 to 30% of the carbon is sequestered. Yeah. All right, and then so that sounds like some, but I really have absolutely no idea what the scale of this is. Can you give me a scope? So, when you think about India, 700 million people, what are we talking about?
Well, for 700 million people, that would be around 350 million pounds a day of human waste at 85% moisture. So you can calculate that out, but it's a lot of carbon. I did a calculation once for rural Canada. If they sequestered their human waste, they could sequester a megaton of carbon every year. So it doesn't take much time. And a lot of places they're moving it long distances. So they're not only, they're wasting a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of carbon, moving that material, because liquid is very expensive to move in a lot of places. They don't have treatment facilities. So having a mobile system or a decentralized. So our value is decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the treatment systems, whether it's landfill or whether it's wastewater treatment, that technology has been around for thousands of years, and it's always based on a centralized model. So it kind of reminds me of the computer industry
Mm-hmm.
back in the 70s. So decentralized is the way to go. I mean, to basically take your waste, send it away, and then from sometimes miles away, and then have to bring it back to get that clean water or water, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So in a lot of areas, you'll see that water recycling, water reuse locally is going to become more and more important, and then the solids, handling the solids is going to become a bigger issue, not just for institutions, schools, apartment buildings. I think you're going to see a big change over the next 10 years of how that is done. And when water recycling is done and water filtration, there has to be something done with the solids, and nutrient recovery and making biochar from that is a great thing to do. So we believe everybody should have one in their house someday, and every institution should, and it should move to decentralized. There's no reason to centralize waste management when we can all deal with it ourselves and reuse and recycle it ourselves. So.
Awesome. I love that vision. I don't know what the equivalent of a desktop in every home. I dig it.
Exactly. So maybe you might have a garbage disposal. In the future, you might have a biochar disposal system in there, and once every 6 months or something, you empty it out, or somebody comes and empties it out. So it should happen. But you can take, for example, all of your human waste and dry it out and fit it in a backpack. It's really not that much as people think. It's mostly water. So if you can get the water out, it's really not that much, and it's very manageable. And I'm hoping long-term people see that that's a good solution. So.
Well, this is a really compelling story, and thank you for sharing it with us. Is there anything, anything that people in our community can help you with, or anything that you would be willing to offer to the community, either expertise or connections that would be helpful to kind of promote biochar as a potential drawdown solution?
Sure. So we're always looking for technology partners. So the material handling and separating is always a challenge. Mm-hmm. Also, if anyone else already has a biochar solution, but they haven't thought about the air emissions, we'd be happy to work with them as well, because there isn't a lot of permitted systems out there. So anything we can do to improve air quality while doing nutrient recovery, we'll do that as well. But certainly we'll look to help for folks. We're looking for high moisture fuels because they're more challenging. Mm-hmm. And anything we can do to help people do that, we will. I mean, we're pretty much doing that in other countries, and if anybody needs any help and advice about how to work in other countries, we've certainly been doing it for a while, and I'd be happy to help out and lend advice. So people can come to our website, biomasscontrols.com, or they can email me, jeff@biomasscontrols.com, and I'll be happy to respond to them that way as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate your time today.
Okay.
And have a good one.
All right. Thanks for the call, Peter.